Hey, what's up, you guys? Caboose XP. I'll bring you another Injustice 2 video, and today what we're going to be doing is another episode of the Injustice 2 Q&A series. That's right, you guys have sent in your questions, and we are going to be answering some more questions that you have sent in through my Twitter and the comment section of my videos. I'm also taking questions through my Instagram and Facebook, so don't worry, I'm just looking for some of the questions that are worth answering on this series. So, with that said, if we can get this video to 1,500 likes, I would really appreciate it. It shows your support, and it lets me know that you guys want to see more episodes of the Q&A series for Injustice 2. So if we can get this video to 1,500 likes, that would be awesome. Now, before we get to the first question that I have for this episode, there's something I need to get off my chest about the Q&A series in general and some of the questions that you guys have been sending in. Now, I'm noticing a lot lately that a lot of the questions that I am being asked are about characters that I would like to see in Injustice 2 or what I would think of so-and-so character being in Injustice 2. A lot of the time, I don't pick those questions simply because, A, most of the time there's videos on the channel that I've already answered towards those specific topics, and B, those are questions that I can't really provide much discussion towards. That's what I'm trying to do with this series in general, is I'm trying to create some form of discussion between myself and you guys. So what I'm going to ask you guys politely to do is try and challenge yourself, try and think of really good questions to ask for this series, so that not only does that increase your chances of showing up in the next episode or the next installment of the Q&A series, it also provides a good discussion between myself and you guys about those questions. Sometimes I do take those questions about what I would think of so-and-so character showing up in Injustice 2, because sometimes those questions can provide some form of discussion, but most of the time I don't pick out those questions just because there's not much to talk about other than, yeah, that would be a pretty cool character to show up in the roster. So that's something I needed to get off my chest. With all that said, let's jump into the first question that we have for today. And funny enough, the first question that we have for today is about a character that I would like to see in Injustice 2. But like I said, sometimes I pick out these questions because they do provide some form of discussion. Now this question comes from DCMK Plays, and they ask, #AskCaboose, would you like to see Nightwing in Injustice 2? And if so, would you rather him be a DLC or a premiere skin? Now you give me the interesting option here of having Nightwing as a premiere skin, and I'm going to assume that you would want Nightwing to be a premiere skin for Robin. And I'm not entirely sure how it would work, but that's definitely something that I would like to see. Nightwing is a fan favorite. I am seeing a lot of people requesting Nightwing, more than I thought I would end up seeing for this game, considering that he was in the first game. So it's very interesting to see how many people really want Nightwing in Injustice 2, and to be quite honest, his chances of being in the main roster as part of whether he's being in the main roster from launch or as DLC are not looking very likely, but him being a premiere skin for Robin might be something that works. The only thing that's holding it back, I'd say, is the fact that Robin is Damian Wayne in Injustice 2, and he uses a sword as part of his moveset. Now, there could be something that may be able to fix this, and that's the fact that you can maybe change the sword to the bow staff or something like that when you're using the Nightwing premiere skin as Robin. But even then, there are parts of his moveset for Robin in which he is straight up stabbing his opponent. So I'm not entirely sure how it would work. I don't think he's going to be a DLC character. I don't think he's going to be in the main roster, but I would like to see him as a premiere skin if they can somehow incorporate it well enough and make it logical. Now our next question comes from YouTube, and this is from Alone, and they ask, #AskCaboose, do you think that Injustice 2 will be a flop in the sense that they wasted character slots with so many similar characters? And the fact that there are never characters from the Injustice comics like Plastic Man, Martian Manhunter, Dr. Fate, Zatanna, Galaxor, etc. Now, to answer the second part of your question, I don't want to sit here and say that there are never characters from the comic books, because a lot of the characters that you just mentioned there were both in Injustice Gods Among Us and are supposedly going to be in Injustice 2. Martian Manhunter was in Injustice Gods Among Us, Zatanna was in Injustice Gods Among Us, and it seems like Dr. Fate is going to be in Injustice 2. Plastic Man, I don't really know what's going on there. I really don't want him to be in Injustice 2, but we'll have to wait and see. Galaxor, that's all really up in the air. So I don't want to sit here and say like, oh, there are never characters from the Injustice comics, because there have been plenty of characters from the Injustice comics that have shown up in both Injustice Gods Among Us and are likely to show up in Injustice 2. We've also got characters like Swamp Thing showing up in Injustice 2 from the comic book. So let's not say that yet. Let's not jump to that conclusion. But to answer the first part of your question, is Injustice 2 going to be considered a flop because of the fact there are wasted character slots with similar characters? And one of the examples that I guess that can be brought up are characters like Swamp Thing and Poison Ivy, or maybe like Cheetah and Catwoman. Those are two characters that are fairly similar, or all four of those characters are fairly similar in their own right. You know, Swamp Thing and Poison Ivy use plants, Catwoman and Cheetah are like feline characters. So I can understand that some people may feel that way, and I think to a degree there are wasted slots. I think a character like Bane is a wasted slot, but then again, his design looks really cool, and the gear system could be really cool. So there's always a silver lining that could be found in everything here. And to be quite honest, considering if the leaked roster list is true, pretty much half of Injustice 2's roster is all new, brand new characters. So I am very content with the Injustice 2 roster. Even if Red Hood doesn't show up and he's DLC, even if Starfire doesn't show up and she's DLC, I'm pretty content with the Injustice 2 roster. You know, Cheetah's a new character, Black Canary's joining the roster, Swamp Thing's one of the highly requested characters joining the roster, Brainiac is our main villain and he's going to be playable. I think that's super cool. Blue Beetle, super highly requested character, showing up in the game. Atrocitus, one of the most fun characters I've gotten to play as through the Injustice 2 beta, and is going to be such a massive hit character for the Injustice 2 roster. There are a lot of new characters being added to Injustice 2 that I'm very happy with, and I'm very excited to see what the rest of the roster looks like. So I don't want to jump to any conclusions and say, yeah, it's a flop, they wasted some character slots, because we can't really say that until we see the gameplay of these characters, until we see, like, man, a character like Scarecrow is so cool in the console version. He has such an awesome moveset, so there's really not much to complain about. Yeah, maybe we didn't want Scarecrow at first, but if he looks awesome and he performs as a really cool character, then there's not much to complain about. I understand that some people are feeling a little underwhelmed because we saw the leaked roster and it's looking to be true, so at this point we know what the full roster looks like, and each reveal is not as much of a surprise as we expected it to be, but let's not feel that way. Let's wait for Injustice 2 to come out and be this full product with all these characters playable and see what it's like before we can say, hey, they wasted a character slot on this or that character. Now, the next question comes from Shaf Mirza on YouTube, and I apologize if I'm pronouncing that name incorrectly, but they ask, #AskCaboose, do you think that we can choose a side in the story mode? For example, the regime side or the insurgency side, and have different missions for each side? Now, this is a really interesting question because this is actually something that I've speculated on before. Will we have the ability to choose between the insurgency or the regime for Injustice 2 and have that form of replayability value for the Injustice 2 story mode? This is something that definitely wouldn't be completely out of left field for a NetherRealm game. For those of you who may remember, Mortal Kombat vs. DC Universe is something that implemented this with their story mode. You can play as the Mortal Kombat characters through the story, or you can play as the DC characters through the story. Inevitably, both the stories do interject and become the same thing by the end of the game, but it's just so cool to have those little nuggets and those little moments playing through both sides of the story. So I hope that's something that happens with Injustice 2, because not only does it increase the replay value for the game, especially for people who are not a fan of the online for the game, it also creates this really cool dual perspective story mode with Batman and the Insurgency and Superman and the Regime. And now the last question of the day comes from Twitter, and this is from @NoOpinions, sorry, and they ask, #AskCaboose, do you think that there will be factions, example, Insurgency, Regime, Brainiac, similar to MKX? To be quite honest, I've never really considered the fact that they could bring this back from Mortal Kombat X, this feature of choosing your faction and having this whole ladder match thing, or these challenges that happen week by week and you can see which faction won the week and everything. That would be something that I would really be excited to return in Injustice 2. And just like you mentioned, you know, you can choose to be in the Insurgency faction or the Regime faction or the Brainiac faction. I think this would be such a fun thing for the community to get involved in, and hopefully if it does return, they expand upon this feature and make it a little more relevant and make it something worth coming back to week by week or day by day playing Injustice 2. I think that would be really cool. Maybe if your faction wins at the end of the week, you had a special piece of gear for a character of your choice or something like that. That would be awesome, and I'm hoping that this does return, because now that you're bringing it up, it could be something that the community could have a lot of fun with Injustice 2. So hopefully factions do return. Thank you for your question. And that's going to round up the questions that we have for this week for the Q&A series. Thank you everyone for submitting your questions to this series. Once again, if you'd like to get your question in for a future installment of the Q&A series, all you got to do is send in your question, whether that's in the comment section of this video or on my social media platforms linked in the description. Just make sure you use the hashtag #AskCaboose in your question. That way I know you're looking to be a part of the series. With all that said, I'm Caboose XBL. Once again, if we can get this video to 1,500 likes, I would really appreciate it. You can click on screen to make your way to one of the other videos on the channel, or you can click my logo to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Please follow me on Instagram and Twitter, and like me on Facebook. Those links are in the description. Drop a like if you enjoyed, leave a comment if you have an opinion, and subscribe if you're new. See you guys later.